Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there, so please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money, so check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Niall.
And I'm Kyle. Welcome to It Gets Weird podcast. Niall, it's a huge week for our show, I gotta say.
Huge.
For stuff going down. You know, who was it? I think it was, I know it was a dictator. Maybe it was like Idi Amin who said, like, there are weeks where nothing happens and then there's days where years happen. Or maybe, maybe not Idi Amin, maybe somebody else. But that's been the case.
I feel like we've been living the second one for quite some time at this point.
That's true. I mean, it is also just the fact that we now live in a time where it's just never-ending inundation of things happening. But I have a good one and some not so good ones.
Yeah.
That I wanted to pick your brain about.
Yeah. Hit me.
Let's start off a little fun.
Okay.
InfoWars has been taken over by The Onion, is my understanding. Now, I seem to recall the news being that they didn't officially have it yet. Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
There's some sort of handover that has to happen, I think. I don't fully, because, like, Alex Jones is yelling about how they're going to fight it in court, and he's, like, always got his shirt off and stuff.
Yeah.
And now they're, like, there's a video going around today that was popping me to no end, where they were posting old Tim and Eric Awesome Show sketches and talking about how, like, satanic they are and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, taking Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job, at face value and, like, act as if these are sincere expressions of Tim Heidecker specifically.
Yeah.
And hearing Alex Jones have to try to make sense of Adult Swim comedy is honestly
very funny.
Yeah, it rules. It whips. It owns. Whatever you want to say.
For those who aren't aware, comedian Tim Heidecker seems to be like a creative director behind this new acquisition of InfoWars by the satirical outlet The Onion. And he's not taking it well. Did you see the post that was going around where I think he posts like a half an hour long clip of Tim and Eric stuff where he's like commenting over it. Have you seen that? Okay.
I didn't watch all of it, but I have seen it floating around and heard the snippets.
Well, I would just like to tell you, I want to share the text of this post from Alex himself about the debacle because it's really funny. Here's what Alex said, okay?
It's nice you're on a first name basis.
Well, it's because I have him here in the room. I told him, you want to just read this out?
Yeah, long time since he's last showed up on the show.
Yeah.
But wow, we got a celebrity in the house.
It's been a minute
back.
since Alex has been on the show, and I reached out to him and his team, and I said, Alex, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been. Do you want to come on the show and maybe, make your official statement to a crowd of people? I mean, like, obviously you sort of I don't know, is he broadcasting as InfoWars? I guess he is.
Yeah.
I'm looking, he's nodding, yes.
There's a very good clip that you can find of him talking about this, about Tim Heidecker, and talking about how he's going to do, Tim Heidecker is specifically trying to impersonate him and, like, and everything, and he's talking about like Tim Heidecker wearing his shirt and he's shirtless. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Here's his post on the matter. Here's Alex, if you don't mind reading this for me. Extreme viewer discretion advised. The man hired by The Onion to take over InfoWars produced pro-pedophile child torture and murder shows for Adult Swim in conjunction with Will Ferrell, who took part in satanic rituals with spirit-cooking high priestess Marina Abramovich. Oh, that's insane, Alex. I did not know that Marina Abramovich was involved with this
the real thing is,
pedophile cabal.
I didn't know Will Ferrell was involved in Tim and Eric Awesome Show.
I'm going to be careful with what I say in front of Alex, because it might sort of shatter the veil for him a little bit. But Will Ferrell is in the Mahanahan's Child Clown Outlet sketches, where he's like their uncle or something. He's Tim and Eric's uncle or something in the sketch. I can't remember. But like, and here's the thing I would also point out.
Alex, not to speak ill of the man who's he's
going to hear
join our podcast.
He doesn't have headphones, but I'm going to relay the message.
Okay, so. Yeah. He makes it sound like Will Ferrell is like a creator of Tim and Eric Awesome Show.
He kind of does.
He's a guest star for like 2 sketches.
Well, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I really haven't seen. So, Alex, I have to be completely upfront with you. I am a huge Tim and Eric fan. I think seen every creative work that this man that you're concerned about has done. Hopefully maybe we can come to some concession here where like I can explain to you that like it's probably not something that, like, I get it, your brand is on the line here, but also I think Marina Abramovich is not involved with the production of Tim and Eric and the awesome show and movie. But he goes on here. Alex walked out of the room when I said that. He's not having any of this. The rest of the post says this. The Satan-obsessed Tim Heidecker has openly bragged that he is set to steal Alex Jones's job and that he plans to steal Alex Jones's identity in order to destroy the InfoWars brand. Alex Jones and his legal team have already filed and are planning to file major legal challenges to this attempted hijacking of InfoWars and his identity by these Democrat-backed deranged lunatics. First of all, also really funny to suggest that Tim and Eric has anything to do with the Democrats.
Yeah, the Tim Heidecker is an op for the DNC.
Look, folks, go look up the Mahanahan Child Clown Outlet. Like, Tim and Eric have always made fucked up stuff. They're aware that the stuff they're making is fucked up, and the fucked upness is why it's funny. Like, I don't know. It's a bummer that Alex doesn't quite get that, but I really am trying to wrap my head around Marina Abramovich and the Democrats being involved in this somehow. They also have the maybe the worst thing Tim and Eric have ever done, which is the shrimp bath from the movie. That's also, like, look, I get it, it's horrifying, but it's also supposed to be funny.
If you ever wanted to see Alex Jones do commentary on shrimp,
and who hasn't?
You get it here. So, like, honestly, they should put out Tim and Eric should put out a featurette on a future release that has Tim as Alex Jones doing commentary on something. Like, they could take the bit pretty far if they wanted to.
It's so ridiculous. Like, people are responding to Alex, like, posting that infamous fake mugshot of Tim, going like, look, this man's a crook. He killed 20 teens with vapes at a festival and stuff. So he's hopefully, really, I am going to just cross my fingers that for Alex, this just leads him down the path to becoming like a comedy nerd. Maybe he gets really into some comedy bullshit. He starts checking out like indie comedy, and he starts, getting into anti-comedy or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Yeah, I think he would really enjoy Neil Hamburger.
That would be awesome. Okay, Alex Jones, since I know you're listening, he's gonna check this episode after. He may have left the room, but he'll probably listen.
He's never
after,
leaving our hearts.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and recommend to Alex, check out the film Entertainment starring Neil Hamburger, and just see how that moves you. That's my first recommendation. Anyways, that was good news.
Yeah, that this when I saw this announced,
Yeah.
I was like, this is the most like Kyle coded decision that might have ever been made in entertainment history.
Yeah.
The Onion buying InfoWars because by using the Sandy Hook family's money, and putting Tim Heidecker as the figurehead is like, it is so specifically targeted at you personally. That I was giddy. It's just such, like, Jules, we were doing something and I was hanging out with Jules and I literally just was like, okay, you're gonna have to know a thing before Kyle finds out about this because it's gonna be the thing he talks about. So like, you just need to be prepared. And I was like, and it's like, oh, Tim Heidecker is going to run InfoWars.
It's the funniest possible way for that to go. I mean, I remember I thought, like, it'll never be funnier than the time that Alex Jones was in court saying he couldn't remember a particular fact because he ate a big bowl of chili earlier that day. And that's still, like, a top moment for him.
It's still very good, yeah.
But I do think this is the funniest possible outcome of all this. And like, Tim Heidecker's whole thing, like, he's known now for, you know, mocking and putting on personas of like right-wing freaks. That's his whole thing now. Well, it's one of his things, right? And it's very funny. So I think it's a natural fit. Very excited for that. You know, suck it, Alex Jones, I guess is how I would conclude that. I do want to bring up something else because I'm curious if you. And I think that this happened maybe before the recording of... Well, one of these happened before the recording of our last episode. There have been 2 major deaths in the UFO community.
Yeah, I've run across... I forget...
Nick
I saw
Pope.
At least one of these. Yes. Okay.
So Nick Pope died of cancer. And then there just recently David Wilcock. And... The thing is, both of those guys are like Ancient Aliens guys. They've been talking heads on there. I am not going to sit here and say that either of them are people that I consider like people that I spent a lot of time reading from in my research into UFO cases and stuff. But they were big enough names that like you couldn't help but run across them. And there's this whole extremely weird thing that I almost got into once that I have not made. I don't know. It feels a little weird to maybe want to revisit this in the wake of his death, but like David Wilcock. Niall, are you familiar with Edgar Cayce?
Yeah.
There is this whole thing where some people believe that David Wilcock was the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's a very niche thing that I saw, and his name came up. Nick Pope obviously comes up a lot, though he was like a really big name. But so I don't know. I don't really know too much about them other than they showed up a lot. They were on Ancient Aliens. Rest in peace, I suppose.
I know them as talking heads. I don't know either of them in depth or anything, but a rip, I guess.
Yeah, rip rig. Rest in peace, rise in glory is what that stands for.
Oh, sure.
But the reason I also wanted to bring this up, and I can never remember if I think I talked about this in World of Weird, but there's this thing about, I keep getting messages from friends because they will see stories online that are like, yo, Kyle's the UFO guy. I'm seeing stories about UFO researchers and scientists suddenly turning up dead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the really tragic part of this is David Wilcock took his own life.
Okay.
He is already getting roped into this string of like science and researchers that have died, quote unquote, mysteriously. Now,
UFO and nuclear researchers, like the net keeps getting wider as people get added to it. Because when I first heard about it, it was all like secret governmental worker nuclear people. and then
Yeah.
the UFO stuff got grafted onto it,
Yeah.
and now it seems to be spreading more.
I talked a bit about on our bonus show about this, and suffice to say, the UFO connection being drawn by the UFO community to these researchers and scientists dying and disappearing is just so unbelievably loose. Like, really just trying to throw these in there. But now David Wilcock is one of the names that has popped up in a few articles as being part of this string of deaths, which I think is absurd.
Wow. Okay.
But it's very weird. The one that was I talked to you on World of Weird about the like military general,
The to the stars guy.
Yes, yeah. But the other one that my friend sent me to that immediately made me suspicious because I had never heard of it before, and it was coming from like r/UFOs on Reddit,
Yeah.
so you already know it's going to be good. But it was this lady Amy Eskridge. Have you seen this?
No, not that one.
Okay. So I'm not going to go too deep into details other than to encourage people to think a little more critically about including Amy Eskridge in this story, because she's a woman who died back in 2022, and she died. The official story is that she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It sucks. When you dig into her, it's like the way she was being talked about online is that she was like a secret, like research scientist person and may have been developing breakthroughs in anti-grav technology. And this is what my friend's just sending to me, like, Kyle, what do you think of these UFO researchers dying mysteriously? And I read into it. First of all, she was in some sort of organization that I looked into called like Institute for Exotic Science.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a thing. It's
Yeah,
not
that
really
sounds kind of fake.
It's not. I couldn't find much about it, but from what I could find is that it was like not really any sort of official. It was unaccredited, and then you start watching some clips of her where people are interviewing her, and it starts to look a little shakier because she's talking about weird, almost gang stalky sort of vibes.
Yep.
But I think the nail in the coffin is that there were like these, I guess, quote unquote, leaked screenshots of text messages where she's talking about how like Bob Lazar is like almost right about anti-grav technology. And that's when I was like, okay, this is obviously bullshit. So
yeah, we're not big up in Bob Lazar now.
No,
No.
he just, the man is he's on the level almost of like Rick. Honestly, he's almost worse than Rick Doty on the level of like just constantly lying about bullshit.
Yeah.
And so Amy Eskridge, my impression, though I don't want to discount that. Like maybe there are scientists and researchers related to like, I don't know, nuclear science disappearing on, and maybe it's genuinely mysterious. I really don't know enough about it to say one way or the other. I think the impulse that these people have had to rope in the UFO stuff has been, I mean, it's all, first of all, the connective tissue is completely so loose to be laughable. But it also does a disservice to the official story that is out. Like,
I mean, that's the thing, is it almost feels, the UFO side of it almost feels like counter intel. It kind of feels like a smokescreen to be like, here's some people that vaguely touched on UFOs that died around the same time as these. There's one where like a guy lived out in the middle of nowhere, and he, for some reason, just like he like stepped out of his house and was like shot by a drive-by when there's not even like roads around him.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the ones where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on there. That is weird.
Yeah.
And feels strange. But like a lot of these other ones they were talking about, it's like they feel tacked on in a way that, you know, I don't want to be the person that starts saying everything is some sort of controlled narrative situation, because that is a rabbit hole that it's very hard to come out of. But it is a thing that I'm much more aware of now than I was at any time before. And so you start to see things, and it at least gives you a taste of like, maybe you don't need to listen to the chatter on this one. Like if I want to know more about it, I can look at some of the facts and try to figure it out, try to make up my own mind on it. But I don't need to hear takes on it, because most takes are not coming from a place of actually helping, you know?
Yeah, and you definitely really should probably ignore the UFO community chatter on this one, because it's there's nothing there, I'm afraid. I guess I'm once again sort of struck by the bizarreness of a friend of mine who has no stake in any UFO, paranormal, conspiracy stuff, anything, in a post-Epstein world, is just like out of the blue, like, dude, were we on to anti-grav technology? Are you seeing this shit? And I'm like, yeah, I looked at, I think honestly, like my honest take is I think the Amy Eskridge thing feels a little bit like she was wrapped up in some sort of scam, which sucks maybe, but I can't say that for sure. But, anyways, that's sorry, I had to talk about this. It was very strange stuff. When you see something like the Institute for Exotic Science, just go online and look around a little bit and look into that person before deciding that, you know, the Bob Lazar connection turned out to be real or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It really is one of those things where it's just like there could be something shady going on with some of it, but now people are just starting to tack as much stuff onto it as possible to fund more and more clicks and outrage, and they're just trying to get you to click the link and send it to your friend and yada yada yada. So.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, Niall, what the hell are we talking about in this episode?
So it's been a while for us since we last touched on this particular subject, and I figured there's some stuff that I knew about it that I knew we had never really gotten too deep on, and so I wanted to revisit the world of Mothman, and specifically the non-Point Pleasant, West Virginia, more recent sightings.
Interesting. Now, I feel like Mothman came up a while ago because he was supposedly seen in Chicago or something.
Yes, I've got plenty on that. Don't worry.
Okay. And I also remember many years ago that on one of my episodes, I had a sighting of Mothman in Israel, I do believe.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I honestly, do I even have the Israel sighting on here? I'm not sure if I do. But the thing that you'll find out once you start looking for Mothman sightings, I originally was starting this as the Mothman World Tour was like my overarching concept here, but much like a lot of rock bands' world tours, there are a lot of dates in America, so it turns into kind of places other than Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but like the other thing that kind of drew me into doing this episode, and the kind of thing that I'm working through right now, I guess this is a way to set it up a little bit, is how much Mothman post Silver Bridge disaster has become a thing that people will see at unfortunate events. Mm-hmm. You know,
as like an omen of
Mothman as an omen or a portent.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. I feel like Mothman has actual legendary status where, like, okay, so like Bigfoot, you get reports of Bigfoot probably every day, just about, if you look in the right place. Like if you were to actually somehow get every single Bigfoot report,
hundreds
probably
of
get
sightings
one
a year.
Yeah, just constantly seeing Bigfoot. Mothman has like true legendary status, as in it's he exists in the whispers, and he hardly ever reveals himself. So I'm curious if there has been any change to that, because especially given how fucking insane everything is now, I imagine that ill omens have to happen all the time, and you got to recruit Mothman. Like, there's only so many black dogs you can put in people's paths and shit, right? Like,
yeah. And like, that's part of what kind of drew me back to this is, like, Mothman has become such a figure to people. Like, that Mothman has now become a pop culture phenomenon in a way that most cryptids don't get to. Like, Bigfoot, Mothman, Loch Ness Monster maybe are the three that, and even Loch Ness is like, has tapered off, I think, a little bit in terms of how many people actively talk about it on a regular basis. But Mothman is like the first thing that has given Bigfoot an actual run for its money in decades. And the thing about it is this kind of feeling of mystery, and some people want to look at him as like this, as like a Watcher-esque figure, and some people want to look at it as like actively having a hand in these destructive events that happen around them. And like, the thing that I was there's an article that by a woman named Sharon A. Hill that I looked at that was really interesting. It was talking about Mothman's place in the cryptid pantheon, because much like Giallo, cryptids do not historically have paranormal or supernatural elements in them. It's just the black gloves, and the knife. But no, it's Mothman. Like, the idea of Mothman as an omen or a portent is actually almost antithetical to it as just being an actual cryptid, because a cryptid is an animal that is heretofore unfound, and is so, like, the way that the cultural perception of Mothman has persisted, and the things that we as a culture have glommed onto Mothman as a figure, almost make it not a cryptid at all. In the traditional definition.
Honestly, I think of Mothman a lot now as almost like an ink blot test entity, where depending on what you want to believe about the world, you can see that in it, or him, or her, or whatever you really want to think. That's the thing. Like, depending on, so if you're the cryptozoologist, it's some sort of winged humanoid biological creature that has yet to be, cataloged, right? But then for the UFO people, it's a couple different things, if I'll be honest. And then for paranormal enthusiasts, or like, and they have crossover between those two things. Like, so it's almost like the Mothman endures, especially because Mothman is like a gestalt of weird.
Yeah. It's like a paragon of high strangeness. Mothman can be anything to anyone, because like, if you think about him, he's a horror figure in terms of being scary and terrifying, but a lot of people want to fuck him. A lot of people want to
fuck Mothman.
And a lot of people graft all sorts of queer identities and all the other things on top of Mothman, in a way that has like morphed Mothman into this kind of cultural force outside of the status as a unknown animal that we are trying to capture, catalog, and categorize.
Yes, 100%. I actually, in storage, have a pride flag that you would like put on the front of your house. It's in storage. It's a pride flag, and it has Mothman's like face on it.
Hell yeah.
It was gifted to me. And yeah, and I'm curious why exactly Mothman became the queer icon. It's not really my place to, speculate, I think, but it's certainly not as, like, obviously there is some Bigfoot queer iconness too, but nothing really comes as close to Mothman as far as I can tell. People did this to the Fresno Nightcrawlers too, who experienced their heyday and were often depicted with some nice legs. People listening to this podcast who may be newer to the show or just kind of unaware of, maybe you're not online, good for you. I respect that. People want to fuck cryptids. People want to fuck cryptids sexually, and I think I have seen more sexy art of Mothman than basically any other cryptid in the canon.
I mean, we have sexualized Mothman throughout the history of this podcast for comedic effect.
That's true. That is true.
It is a running theme on shows of this ilk.
I think I think episode 8, where we talked about Mothman with Colin, friend of the show Colin, one of the first things we talked about was making out with Mothman. I'm pretty sure.
This is like the interesting thing that I think is just like, Mothman feels like an almost evolution of a cryptid to a lot of people, in the way that we see, like, because it is almost like a mascot at this point, more so than it, like, almost divorced from the actual context of being a figure that scared the shit out of people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia between 1966 and 67, and may or may not have had a hand in the Silver Bridge collapse. Now it's almost like this thing where he's just mysterious and spooky and cool, because, like, for if anyone somehow is listening to this episode of the podcast and has not come across the concept of Mothman, here's like a 30-second rundown. Mothman is a humanoid winged creature, approximately 6 feet tall and with a 10-foot wingspan, that is all black with very dark, like very shiny red eyes. And he was seen in the woods of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, around a factory and a wildlife preserve crossover point, and terrorized the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia between 1966 and 67, before the climax of the whole thing, where there was a bridge collapse that he was seen around. And that is where the whole idea of omens and portents come from, is that Mothman appears almost Uatu the Watcher like at significant historical events where something tragic is going to happen.
I'm curious. So, like, I can entertain the comedic, I want to fuck Mothman, I want to suck Mothman, he's a sexy cryptid. I can entertain that, like, in the moment. If I'm in my this is such a weird way to say this, in my private time ruminating on Mothman, I do conceive of him, like, my personal relationship with Mothman, it's kind of like God. It's kind of like God.
Yeah. Everyone's relationship with Mothman is very deep and personal and unique.
Yeah. So I'm curious how this is for you, but mine, if I actually am, and I'm not joking, if I'm sitting around thinking about Mothman and stuff, my perspective is very informed by Gray Barker and the stories coming out in the, around the time that the Silver Bridge incident happened. So I do kind of think of it almost as like an interdimensional entity, and kind of a monster, and sort of a little bit of a supernatural bent for me. But I know, again, this is going to be different for everybody you talk to. I'm curious, like, for you, do you conceive of Mothman as more of a cryptid or what?
Yeah, like, I would have called Mothman a cryptid, and still might. You might hear me do it now and then. But I do think that, like, if I were to give a full conception of it, if Mothman exists, which we're presupposing, and even half of these sightings, even a third of these sightings, now I don't know what awful things, I'm going to need someone to tell me what awful things were going on in the years he spent in Chicago, because I don't 100% know what he was there for that long, which we'll talk about later, but it's... I do think there's some sort of, if, like, the concept of Mothman to me is somewhat supernatural or strange, there is some element of high strangeness or Forteana to Mothman to me.
Yeah. I think we're somewhat similar then.
Yeah. So do you want to dive into some of
Sure,
the
yeah,
wider exploits of one John H. Mothman?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So the first place that I found a sighting that, like, this is not an exhaustive list. You can go out and find, you know, sightings till the cows come home. But here's a bunch of somewhat notable ones that I think tell an interesting kind of pattern for him. One of the first sightings I found outside of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and really outside of the U.S., dates back to August of 1969 in Da Nang, Vietnam.
Oh.
Now, it was the witness was one Earl Morrison, a U.S. Marine who was stationed in Da Nang, Vietnam, who saw a winged entity in August of 1969 at approximately 1 a.m. while on guard duty at the base he was stationed at. He and two of his cohorts saw this. Here they do state approximately 6 foot tall figure with glowing eyes and bat-like wings hovering above a bunker. However, they do describe it in a lot of the original accounts as being a, quote, winged woman. It did move silently and circled for approximately 10 minutes above the camp before vanishing. Now, when Morrison's account made its way to cryptozoologists, they then started to lump it in with the idea of a global Mothman phenomena. But how far removed it was from, like, I don't know exactly where Earl Morrison was born or came from or anything. I just know that he was a U.S. Marine stationed in Vietnam. But Mothman was a big enough story in the news that it feels like there's a chance he could have at least heard of Mothman before being stationed in Vietnam, you know?
Yeah, okay. I feel like I've heard this story before. And I'm immediately jumping to the idea that have you ever heard of the operations conducted in Vietnam that were let's call them spooky? I believe, and if I get this wrong, folks, I apologize. It's been a while since I read about this. I believe that this would have been under Operation or the Phoenix program.
Yeah.
Where they would do shit like, you know how they'll, like, drop pamphlets and stuff with propaganda during, you know, places that were trying to fuck up. One of the things that I remember hearing about is that in Vietnam, they would play audio into the jungle. Yep. That would be like I think, like, one of them was, like, based on a ghost story, like a local ghost story, or, like, they would play, like, screams of, like, people who were maybe victims of or whatever. Basically, just really fucked up stuff like that. This sighting makes me think that this Mothman is a part of the Phoenix program.
Here's the thing. I thought about, I'm trying to remember exactly, because there's a story like that I've heard where they would play like hushed whispers of Vietnamese voices.
Right. Yes. Right.
At, like, talking about "please take me home" and stuff, trying to make to play on the kind of supernatural beliefs of the Vietnamese and how they because, like, there's something. This is me half remembering something from reading it years ago. So if I get a custom wrong of Vietnam, I apologize. But they would, like, you have to bring the body back to like the home place within, like, a certain amount of time, and they would basically try to, like, psyop people into thinking that they're going to damn their cohorts to eternity by not and, like, freak them out by thinking they're being haunted by people they did not take care of properly, you know?
Yeah, that's the same kind of stuff I'm talking about. And I do believe this is the Phoenix program. I think people, I might be misremembering the name, but who's to say that they didn't, you know, dress somebody up in a suit or, like, you know, do a Mothman blue beam on people, you know?
Yeah, like, because I was looking through a thing that I came across but didn't go too deep on this time was people who have since come out and claimed like there are honestly too many people at this point for the number of sightings of Mothman there were in Point Pleasant at that time, but people have come out and claimed that they were doing pranks on people back at that point, like various people have kind of taken credit for certain sightings, and there's some conflicting nature of some of those on who actually, like, multiple people have claimed the same sightings as far as I'm aware. But they would talk about using like helium balloons with red lights attached to them that were like, and floating them up above the tree line. And like, I could totally see, the U.S. Army or whoever in Vietnam, perpetrating similar shit to that,
Yeah, I have a book on some of the spookier elements of Vietnam that I really ought to read, probably for this show. So, yeah.
So here's the thing. This one is a little bit of an aberration because A, winged woman, B, there's not a specific calamity that this is presaging. Vietnam as a whole was awful. Like, the Vietnam War sucked, but there wasn't a specific tragedy that this thing was kind of being an omen for.
Now,
however...
Oh, I was just going to say, if I was... So you said this is a moth woman?
Yeah, a quote, winged woman, but otherwise matches the description of Mothman.
If I were, let's say, a cartoonist or like a designer of creatures, and we have this established Mothman... What I am now picturing, Niall, is sort of the same exact thing, but give it bazongas. Is that sort of what we're working with here? For sure.
Just fucking Mothman with fucking F cups. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of depictions of this. I'm sure people have done it, but most people just like... This is a footnote on a lot of Mothman sightings. Like, it was soon after Point Pleasant. It was seen in Vietnam. And it's just kind of like, this story doesn't get expanded upon a lot in various tellings that I saw, because it effectively is just used as a launching point for the idea that Mothman goes to other countries,
Yeah.
Do you ever find that where like you find like pivot points in people's storytelling where it's like, oh, this is just a kind of a device that you're using to build the rest of the essay, Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I do love, though, the idea of Mothman just exploring other countries, though. That is really fun to me.
So the next place that he pops up is in the mid-'70s in Brazil.
These are... Can I just point out that these are very interesting times and locations for the sighting of the Mothman? I just want to throw out there, it's interesting.
Now, this one specifically is in Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil, where there's just reports of locals seeing the Mothman flying up above around the time there started to be flooding in the region. So people are thinking that he was checking out the oncoming floods.
Or created
in Brazil. True, or created it. Yet again, not a lot of details. Like, a lot of the stuff that, like, I have some more detailed accounts for sure, but in the lists, where anytime you're trying to look at, like, the idea of a Mothman world tour, so many of them are just locals said they saw this thing, and then this bad thing happened, and that's about the extent of it.
Well, when the Brazilian gamer was all chatting in that game and saying, come to Brazil, they didn't know that on the other end was Mothman, and he listened.
It's true.
Cautionary tale.
So after taking a quick flood journey in Brazil, he hightailed it over in 1978 to Freiburg, Germany.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm...
No, if you have any thoughts on the map here, please tell me.
I'm just thinking about all the places I've heard Mothman has been, and it's just it's starting to actually make Mothman. I'm now going to put my foot down. Maybe Mothman's a little sinister. We're going to late 60s in Vietnam. We're going to Brazil in 1970. Now we're going to Germany. And then also, we know he fucking got into some fucking trouble in Israel. We know that.
And look, just You're one ahead of me.
Okay.
Because the next one is you just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
We're gonna stick September 10th, 1978 in Freiburg, Germany. There was a group of miners, who came face to face with Mothman. They described him as a headless creature with glowing red eyes in its chest.
Oh.
And it was literally blocking the entrance to the mine, so they couldn't escape.
Now, this is a fun variant of Mothman, because some people will depict Mothman as, like, actually humanoid with, like, a head on a neck. But there are some of these... I actually really like the ones where he almost feels like, oh my god, what's the goop pollution monster in Godzilla?
Hedorah.
Where its head is, like, sunken in.
Yeah.
Like that. I really like it. He doesn't actually have a head. He's just all one, like, torso mass. I love that one.
There's like a face at the top of the chest. Yeah, I really like that too. That probably would be my preferred Mothman variant. So at first they thought it was just a man in a trench coat, but they pretty quickly realized that was not true when it unfurled its wings. They basically were stunned and stood there looking at this thing until it let out a blood-curdling screech that sent the miners running. About an hour later, the men felt a seismic rumble and saw a big plume of dust shoot out of the mine as it collapsed. So, effectively, Mothman saved these people's lives because they were about to go to their stations in this mine that was about to collapse.
Interesting.
So, now, this one did get dubbed the Freiburg Shrieker, if you want to look into it. So, if that... Mothman is a.k.a. the Freiburg Shrieker.
Now... it's interesting to paint it as Mothman saved their lives. I can see why that might be the takeaway. I would also just point out maybe this Mothman was just running late.
True.
And just like didn't show up at the right time, mistimed,
I mean,
stunning
time
them in the
zones
collapse.
are hard to keep track of,
Yeah, this guy's popping over from Brazil to Germany. He's probably all over the map here. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, we can't say for certain that this Mothman was trying to save their lives and may have just been an ill-timed omen.
Yeah. It's definitely true. But, like, I do like to think that in this particular instance, didn't try to save anybody in the Silver Bridge collapse or in Brazil with the flooding, but these Freiburg, Germany miners gotta save their lives. And one of those people was Adolf Hitler. I don't know. So
no, he was in Argentina, I think.
Yeah, I think by that point he was
no,
either worm food or in Argentina.
Definitely worm food. Do you think though that like shit, I don't even know where I was going to go with that. I was basically, do we know if there's any sightings of Mothman in Argentina around the time Hitler would have been hanging out there? You've seen the photo of him like hanging out outside the coffee shop, and he's like freshly coiffed, but still undeniably Hitler-esque. I'm just wondering, maybe there's some sightings around there.
I did not find any in Argentina specifically on my list here, because I got sidetracked. Here's you know what you were just saying before when we got into Freiburg, Germany?
Yeah.
The next sighting I have for you is in 1986 in Chernobyl, Ukraine.
Huh. Okay. That's I've never heard this before. That's crazy. I think I may have heard of a couple of these before. I have never heard of Mothman at Chernobyl.
So it has come to be known as the Black Bird of Chernobyl, or the Chernobyl Mothman. I do really like we'll get to it later too with more of them, but there's a lot of these that you'll find listed online as the city they were seen in, then Mothman. So there are between either it's all one or there might be 4 different Mothmen in Japan.
Sure.
And we'll get to that eventually. But for now, we're talking about the Chernobyl Mothman or the Blackbird of Chernobyl. So the story goes that various workers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant saw a black bird-like creature with red eyes just mere days before the April 26, 1986 meltdown. And I did also find accounts that said as the thing was melting down, the Blackbird was seen over the complex by workers who were fleeing. Like
Jesus.
that one is less common. I will say that is that isn't the most detailed sighting I have, but the one ahead of time I do have. So one thing I will state about this is that the accounts for this did not come from 1986. Mm-hmm. These accounts came about multiple years later. I don't know, like they could have been. I don't read every Russian or Ukrainian tome on sightings at Chernobyl.
Really, that surprises me.
Largely, these are considered after the fact accounts. Mm-hmm. So, various witnesses described seeing a 7-foot-tall winged humanoid circling the facility at dusk, accompanied by feelings of dread and strange phone calls, which means maybe Mothman brought the Men in Black with him too this time. I don't know.
I mean, I would believe that. I would believe that the Men in Black maybe follow in the wake of the Mothman. I would also believe that if eventually the elephant's foot would hatch and a newer, stronger Mothman would be born from it.
Yeah, the elephant's foot is a Mothman egg. That's really we're breaking new ground here. So this is just an interesting thing. So there's a guy named Robert Maxwell who's from Sydney.
Okay, probably a different Robert Maxwell.
He's an archaeologist.
Okay, yeah,
so
it's a different
probably
Robert Maxwell.
Different. He's the sole archaeologist who has ever actually worked at Chernobyl post the nuclear fallout. He took 2 trips there in both 2010 and 2012. He recounts the story as such. The story goes that many of the workers in the control room saw a supernatural being in the skies over Chernobyl in the days before April 26, 1986. Additionally, they reported they had seen this dreadful creature right before the explosion. The Blackbird has also developed into one of those somewhat safe urban legends where if you try to hunt for evidence, it might not be available because the workers are deceased, or perhaps the sightings were never formally reported. The legend says that 5 workers at Chernobyl claimed to have seen a big black headless creature with enormous wings and fiery red eyes. Some Chernobyl workers reported having terrifying nightmares, while others reported receiving threatening phone calls. So he's one of the first people to talk about this. And then another account comes from 2007, where it claims that various residents started to encounter sightings of this strange creature in the area then. So he seemed to come back maybe in 2007 a bit and like be seen around the areas. But yeah, so the Blackbird of Chernobyl is largely considered Mothman sightings. I don't know if there are people that think it's something different. It very well could be, because like some people, there's a thing where if you go in this direction, there are people who think that Mothman is a form of angel, and that is why he's being seen around sites of death and tragedy and everything. And so there are people who look at this as some sort of kind of Judeo-Christian being around the fallout of Chernobyl. Which is a little weird.
The anti-stork. You know, one brings you new life, the other one whisks you straight to hell, I guess. So there's no like concrete origin point for I saw Mothman at Chernobyl. It's just sort of a thing that gets kicked up in the dust of the event, I guess. Yeah, it came about years later. So I don't think it's a lot of direct sources. It's a lot of I heard from somebody about this thing, which sure,
you know, whatever. Now there was then unverified reports of Mothman sightings in 1999 in Moscow, Russia, right before certain apartment bombings that took place in that year. Mm-hmm. And so that one you don't get a lot of information. Yet again, like everything else, it's just unnamed people claim to have seen Mothman around the time of these apartment bombings. But Kyle, that then takes us to 2001 in New York City, New York.
Yeah, so can you give me like a little bit more details on the date? Because that's important to me.
It would be, I believe, let me check my notes here. September.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, September 11th.
Oh, God.
Does that mean anything to you?
I mean, I honestly can't remember. But that's, it's just, again, these are all very interesting times. And also, like, you did kind of freak me out when you said the name Robert Maxwell, because I thought you were about to tell me that Robert Maxwell somehow... Do you know who Robert Maxwell is?
Not off the top of my head.
The father of Ghislaine Maxwell.
Total, sure.
Total freak villain of the world. So I thought, and he died under weird circumstances off his yacht. And I thought there was going to be some...
Mothman got him.
Yeah, I thought you were about to tell me that Mothman fucking shoved Robert Maxwell into the ocean.
Yeah, no. No, this is, as far as I'm aware, an entirely separate guy who does archaeological expeditions into Chernobyl.
Unfortunate name. But a really wild fucking job, now that you, like, laid it out like that. Excavations into Chernobyl is, like, a crazy thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
And cool. So tell me, how did Mothman do 9/11?
So, New York resident Stephen Moran captured a photograph of the ruins of the World Trade Center shortly after the attacks, in which there is an object that looks like a winged entity.
Yeah. Sorry, I've seen this. It's been a while, but I've seen this photo.
You can find the photo around if you look up Stephen with a V, Moran, and Mothman. It's gonna pop up. Yeah. And, like, there is something in the photo. Take whatever crack at it you want. I don't necessarily think it was Mothman, but I do like to think maybe Mothman was there just watching over things, taking a gander. Yeah. He saw Robert Pattinson staring out of that window as the planes were coming in,
Oh, I forgot about that. That's a great...
How can you forget about that? That like
so many things surrounding 9/11, it really, I tend to forget it, ironically.
Now, can I tell you with certainty what the name of that movie is? No.
Robert Pattinson in 9/11 the movie.
Yeah, in 9/11 as a twist ending in a movie. Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot the movie isn't about that. Twist
it literally it literally zooms out and you find out that the building he works in is 9/11 is the World Trade Centers, and he's on 9/11. Like, it is
that is
a
great.
Buck wild
That's awesome.
thing to do. So Moran, there's a quote here that him talking about the photograph and where it came from. He says, "I live in New York, and when I live in New York, yeah." And when I heard the Twin Towers were attacked, I immediately rushed to the scene to take photographs. First of all, I took pictures of medical workers who were providing assistance. Then I took pictures around the site towards the south on Greenwich Street. When I got home, I realized there was an object that caught my camera. And this has led to a lot of speculation. Moran thinks it could be an angel. He says, "Looks like an angel was hovering above the ruins of the World Trade Center fractions. Maybe it's not a pigeon or a stork because of their large size. Moreover, we do not have the pelicans or bird carcasses in New York." So he thinks it's an angel.
Can I just want to throw this out there? Why do you think one of God's, divine creations would be allowed to be photographed, like, with just a normal human camera? Like, what? The fucking gall, in my opinion, to make that claim. Personally,
it really does seem pretty intensive there. But, like, Mothman has been seen as kind of an angel of death throughout history, if you look at him in that lens. So maybe it's an angel.
It's making me think of the Butterfly Men, where, like,
the
Butterfly Men were like guardian angels, like taking the spirits of the people who died in that tragedy away or whatever, and the kids were sort of interpreting the event through that lens or something, and the folklore cropped up around it. So, like, when I hear somebody say, like, oh, Mothman is an angel and he's at all these, like, tragic events, I feel like what they're trying to say is that, like, the angel came to, like, shepherd them to the Lord's side.
Yeah, right? Sure. Now, how do you feel about
death?
Now, tell me how this tracks with your theory, Kyle.
Yeah.
On the day of the attack, certain people would claim that they could see Mothman's face in the smoke and debris above the towers. So not the actual creature Mothman,
just a symbol.
as if at unto Jesus's face on a tortilla or toast.
Yeah.
They saw Mothman's face in the smoke and wreckage and debris of the World Trade Center.
Huh.
How does that track? Because like this really is where it feels like Mothman has fully become a borderline like mimetic entity. You know?
Yeah.
Like has entered the cultural consciousness to the point where we are pareidolia seeing him in smoke. You know?
Well, that to me is way more ominous and seems less like a divine messenger of God and like the shepherd of death for sure. To me. That would not track with the angel, the other angel that I am hearing from certain people. Yeah. But having your face appear in smoke has like a little bit of like an evil zhuzh inherently, I think. Have you ever seen the video of the lady who's like, my toaster's haunted, and it like pops out toast that has like, it says like Satan rules or something on it? That's a really good video. I just wanted to mention that. Really good. Look that up, y'all.
So the next place I saw Mothman pop up in his world tour, or his world tragedy tour, is there were anecdotal reports linking Mothman sightings to the 2009 swine flu outbreak in Mexico. Supposedly Mothman was hanging out in the rural areas of Mexico around the time of the spread of swine flu in 2009.
I remember when that happened. I remember being pretty freaked out by it too, because people were talking about it like it was going to kill all of humanity. So, yeah. And like Mad Cow was also kind of talked about in this way of like it's going to spread to humans and it's going to kill everyone. I'm assuming these are two things that are still maybe problems to this day. I mean, do you know? I don't know. Do the swine flu and mad cows still like get outbreaks in places? Or I know I think Mad Cow had an outbreak in Illinois last year. I think. I
don't know. It didn't really come up in my Mothman research, unfortunately.
That's fair. That's very fair.
But I wouldn't be surprised if swine flu was still an issue somewhere. So next we go to he had a bit of a run in Japan in like 2011. Specifically, if you will remember, if that date means anything to you, March 11th, 2011, which was the date of the earthquake and tsunami in Fukushima. Mm-hmm. There are, again, witnesses describe seeing a dark winged figure with glowing eyes near the nuclear plant. Now, there is a more detailed sighting here by a guy named Marcus Pules, Pules. He claims to have made a sighting of what he described as Mothman in the area of Fukushima. He said that he had been in Japan on business in February of 2011 and was staying with a longtime friend who was teaching English in the rural town of Akuma in the Fukushima region. The two friends went out for a walk around the town, and in the evening they went to the seaside, walking along a trail that meandered near the Daiichi Fukushima nuclear power plant. And at this point, it was still in normal working condition, and there were no real hints that the major disaster was on its way. And at this point, Pools claimed that he heard a sudden whooshing sound, which he at first thought was like ocean waves, in the sea nearby. But eventually, when the sound repeated itself, and then was followed by this really loud shriek, he turned to look around, and he said, "Here." We heard it again, the whooshing noise, followed by an ear-pitching screech that shook me down to the bone and made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. We looked around for the cause of the noise when we heard the sound again. The best way I can describe it is a city bus's brakes when they are in need of service, loud and ear-splitting. We both continued to look around when my friend's attention was drawn toward the plant by another nearby couple. A younger couple, out for a walk, were staring toward the power plant, arms outstretched and with obvious fear in their voices showing. They looked and saw what appeared to be a winged large figure silhouetted in the plant's lights in the moonlight, sitting atop one of the buildings of the power plant. When they they took this in for just a second before the figure suddenly unfurled what looked like a massive set of black wings and launched itself into the sky, where it circled the plant several times. They said they circled the plant at least four to five times, that in various speeds. He said that like some of the circuits he took at a very fast pace, whereas in other ones he slowed down almost as if he was like looking for something. All the while he was like looking at this row of square-shaped buildings that he later found out housed the reactors. So supposedly Mothman was very honed in on the specific place of the reactors where the meltdown would have taken place.
I find it sort of interesting that in a lot of these stories we don't maybe have an official source.
Mm-hmm.
But here we have not a local reporting on it.
Same with Da Nang. It was a U.S.
Da Nang,
in a U.S.
That's right.
soldier in Vietnam. Like that is the thing that is sticking with me. Like there are sightings of Mothman in Japan by Japanese people in various other places. There's one in Kyoto, and then there's another one. There's like a third city that is in, but the sighting wasn't that detailed, so I didn't make note of it too deeply. But so like it isn't just English people or American people seeing Mothman other places, but there is this kind of current of it happening in a way that it feels tied to that kind of cultural consciousness idea of Mothman as this figure. So your brain is kind of auto-completing something with the thing that you know.
That's what I was going to say is it feels like you, to have it become a Mothman sighting, you almost have to, it has to be filtered through the culture that, is interested in Mothman,
Yeah.
And not to say, I think Mothman does have some level of popularity in Japan, but my impression is also that the Flatwoods Monster is to Japan what like Bigfoot is to us. So
yeah. Now, what's fun is, in trying to do some research on, there was a time when this episode was going to almost specifically be Mothman in Japan, but it turned into a wider net. But I did find a cryptozoological blog in Japanese that is pretty extensive and has a lot of updates. So I'll send you that link after this episode. I would love to see that. Because that and a translation app on your browser, and you're in for a good time.
Nice.
Because like I got the Marcus Puel stuff directly from a Japanese cryptid blog.
Yeah, so I guess what I wanted to, say is like, would the people around Chernobyl, would they interpret this event as a Mothman thing, or is it just because this then filtered its way back to the United States? That's what I'm curious about for all these stories, because like I feel like Mothman, if you live outside of the United States, and I'm not talking to you, England can sit this one out. And I guess Canada, not because of any negative feelings, but because, well, no, I don't know. I'd be curious to get a Canadian perspective on Mothman, but I'm curious how Mothman is viewed outside of the United States, and if he has anything close to the level of popularity as he does here.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Well, because so far, like the Blackbird of Chernobyl, the Freiburg Shrieker, these are all names given that are entirely separate from Mothman, and they're ones from people who were non-English speaking in other countries. So like there's something to the fact that like Mothman is an American concept that has permeated out into the consciousness of the wider world if you're kind of attuned to those things. But it's not known necessarily worldwide in the level that it is in America. And so a lot of times the ones that are non-English speaking sightings get grafted onto the Mothman legend after the fact.
Yeah. I feel like Bigfoot has better cross-cultural permeation than Mothman. Like Bigfoot to me is the one who is almost probably an idea that's like known pretty well worldwide. Mothman feels a little American to me. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts. So if you're listening and you're not in the United States and have a thought on this, please email the show.
Yeah. As the thing took to the sky, it then swooped in and went over our couples here. That was when a quote unquote sick, intense, and overwhelming feeling of dread came over them. And it suddenly flew off towards the town. And while his friend started to take out his cell phone to take photos of it, it faded off into the distance, leaving everyone involved in kind of a state of panicked confusion. And they basically just ran home after this. They talked about whether it was a large bird or an optical illusion caused by the lights of the plant, but both of them deep down knew that it was something else. You know, they didn't know what it was exactly, but eventually they came to the conclusion of Mothman. But like I said, they didn't immediately go, oh, it's Mothman, you know?
Yeah. I now have a deep fire burning within me, a passionate desire to see Mothman depicted having a good time in a maid cafe.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of like
I think we can do that.
Has anybody done like Mothra artwork of like Mothra fan art, but it's Mothman, which I guess
almost certainly
that has to be a thing.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool.
Mothra Man is probably out there. Yeah.
Man, yeah.
Now that, like I said earlier, there are other sightings of Japan. Here is a native Japanese person witnessing Mothman, and that would be the Kyoto Mothman, which also took place in 2011, but in April. So, like I said, Mothman seemed to have gone to Japan in 2011 before hightailing it to Chicago.
Yeah.
It also hung out, which it set up residence in Chicago from 2011 to 2018. Now, there are sightings other places during this time period. Like it isn't exclusively located there, but either there's, if you want to try to graft logic onto this, there either are multiple Mothmen out there and just one of them took residence in Chicago, or Mothman travels a lot,
Well, when's the last time somebody checked up on the elephant's foot in Chernobyl? Has that
been a while?
Maybe it's been a couple years since we've checked in and that thing cracked and there's been another Mothman out there.
Yeah. So the actual Kyoto sighting comes from a toy producer named Ryo Onzai, who at about 8 a.m. on an April morning in 2011 took some photos of the sky with his camera, just as like it's described as casually taking photos of the sky. So I assume this is just a thing that he does. He likes to take photos and happened to take some photos of the sky. But when he went to go check the photos, he found what appeared to be a black flying creature in them. And he says he was able to guess its movement from the series of photos, but it was moving in a very strange way. So it seemed to be ambulating in a kind of strange way. But here's just an interesting thing. I don't remember this one specifically, but cryptid researcher Bintaro Yamaguchi's colleague Sendayu Kurumatsu pointed out the connection to a yokai named Taimatsu Maru, which is a yokai that I'm actually looking it up right now. Let me just put a mark in here. I meant to look this up before I started this episode, and then I got sick and distracted. Oh yeah, it's a flying. I want to make sure that I'm not using like a yokai watch wiki real quick. Here we go. So, yeah, connection to a yokai called Taimatsu Maru, which is a flaming, flying bird, humanoid bird,
like
person.
A phoenix, in a way.
Kinda, yeah. But I get how you could make the kind of I could see how those would be related. It's a fire-bearing bird yokai, is how it's described.
I just realized that I said all that shit about Mothman maybe not being as prevalent in Japan, and then I remembered that a very popular Shin Megami Tensei devil is just Mothman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
I feel silly now. Actually, Mothman may have more popularity in Japan than I realize.
I mean, like just one appearing in one Shin Megami Tensei game is.
I think he's in multiple. I think he's in multiple Shin Megami Tensei. And I was also going to throw out there, like, do you know this toy maker who took the photo? Do we know what toy company? Because I'm curious if there's any relationship between, like, oh, this guy saw Mothman. Also, he makes toys of cryptids and stuff. You know what I mean? Because I've seen these fun little Japanese cryptid toys with, like, the Flatwoods Monster and stuff.
Yeah. I have not specifically, like, when I looked up his name, a musician came up.
Sure.
And an artist and stuff, but there's not, it's not specifically hyperlinked in a way that I could find, or that I could confirm that it's the same guy. So I don't know much about Reo Anzai, unfortunately.
Sure.
So now we come back to America, and we're going to talk a little bit about, this is the last major thing we're going to talk about, which is the Chicago and Midwest sightings between 2011 and 2018. And this is where the creature yet again most closely resembles the Point Pleasant cryptid, and pretty much brought, like, I think the Chicago sightings of Mothman helped to turn it into the cultural juggernaut that it's become. Because, like, there were enough news articles and stuff at the time that it got, like, coworker famous, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Mothman in Chicago generated enough buzz that it matching that with the, like, online cutification of Mothman, and you get the current buzz around the cryptid, I think. But because in 2017 alone, which is the peak of this whole phenomenon, there were over 50 reports in Chicago and surrounding areas alone of Mothman. Most of them are very small and anecdotal, but there are some larger ones, and we're gonna kind of quickly talk about a couple of them. It all starts in the suburbs of Chicago in August 22nd, 2011, when an anonymous witness was driving through the Chicago suburbs and reported seeing a winged humanoid near a business with a Native American sculpture. It was seen supposedly, like, perching on top of the sculpture, which is why it's referenced here. And it was a 7-foot tall creature with glowing red eyes and a 10-foot wingspan that would fly low down over the road, with its silhouette resembling a, quote, bat-like man, which is very much in the initial mold of things here. And part of why my theory, in part, is that the wave of Chicago Mothman stuff comes about in part because of the chronicling of the blog Phantoms and Monsters, which is a pretty major cryptozoological blog that does a lot of charting stuff. But I think actively tracking this thing as it happened and updating over time leads to better cataloging and also a more concentrated wave, so to speak. Like, more reports started to happen because there was buzz about it, that because places were reporting on it and chronicling, and it became this kind of cycle that at least that's how I feel. I don't want to fully lay it at the feet of this blog for making stuff. I'm not claiming they made any of this up. I'm just claiming that by chronicling it and by citing it as a wave, it led to the wave happening in some ways.
That website also one of the ones where people can just sort of submit their stories to the person who runs it? So, you know, you take it or leave it, I guess, you know, because I know for a fact that we have read stories from that website before, and, you know, grain of salt and all that, I guess, but that's part of how they get their stories, is that people just send them in, and people could lie, whatever, who knows.
The second sighting was from a University of Illinois Chicago student on September 30th, 2011. He wrote that that night they were in their apartment when they suddenly heard the roommate scream. They ran into their roommate's room to check on her and found her cowering in the corner, quote-unquote, white as a ghost and shaking. Once the roommate was able to calm down, she explained that as she was getting dressed, she saw a pair of glowing orange eyes staring at her through the window, despite the fact their apartment was on the 3rd floor.
Mothman peeping? Is that what I'm hearing here? What the hell?
Mothman peeping Tom in Chicago.
I don't like this, especially after a trip from Israel. It's just... I have to insist. All the stuff we've talked about today kind of paints a bad picture of Mothman.
Yeah, like the more you try to, the more I make a list, the less I like it. You know.
Yeah.
So the witness is quoted as saying, "She said she was filled with this overwhelming feeling of complete and total terror. She felt like the creature was looking at her as though she was prey. She said she felt like a rabbit that was about to be pounced upon by an eagle." At about this time, the witness's boyfriend called, sounding like he was out of breath, and is quoted as I tried to get him to slow down, I walked past my roommate's open door, and to my absolute horror, I saw a pair of glowing red eyes looking through the window right at me. They stared at me for about 3 to 4 seconds before whatever it was abruptly left. Like my friend, I totally lost it and screamed at the top of my lungs. So, Lon. Okay, that's who it is. The Phantoms and Monsters. His name is Lon Strickler, and he's like a cryptozoologist that runs that website and has kind of championed the wave of Chicago Mothman. That was the name I was trying to come up with earlier. So a lot of the sightings kind of go with that like various people seeing, there's one in Lincoln Park, there's one in Oz Park, there's one in the Little Village, there's on Northerly Island. These are all in 2017. Like most of them account to Mothman kind of being seen, instilling this horrifying sense of fear, and then leaving. There isn't a whole lot of like contact,
Yeah.
But there is one in the Little Village sighting on May 21st in 2027 or 2017. Mothman did land on the car's hood. So that is the first, the closest to like physical contact that we get, that because like that is the thing that happened in Point Pleasant is Mothman kind of attacking cars. It left like talon scratch marks in the door and shit. So this is the closest we get to that, really, where it came down on the hood and then just flew off. But the witness experienced physical tremors and nightmares long afterward. So it was a very horrifying event for them. Yet again, you'll notice that none of these are some sort of omen or portent. Like,
yeah,
there's not.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I mean maybe these people experienced individual personal disasters that we just don't know about, but
Yeah, maybe.
Usually it's something big.
So here's one more that I want to. There's actually, I have one more after this, but one more little one that I just think is interesting because I want to find this footage. A cyclist in Pilsen, Chicago, captured GoPro footage of a winged entity on August 4th, 2017 at approximately 2 p.m. The dark 6-foot-tall creature with a 10-foot wingspan flew over the street, initially thought to be a Mothman. Paranormal investigator Tobias Wayland analyzed the video, concluding it was likely a great blue heron due to its thin legs and wing shape. So this one specifically, there's video, and it is dead in like the heat of these things, and it was attributed to a blue heron by a cryptozoologist. So part of me wonders if there was some sort of migration of blue herons to the Chicago area in the time period,
Yeah.
Like global warming or some shit. I really don't know.
I went and I immediately had to go look and see. Oh, well, there's something. Tobias Wayland, Unsolved Mothman. Oh, it's like an hour long. I was hoping it would be the video. Damn, okay. I'll have to look for that.
So, I do think it's just interesting to state there have been Mothman sightings in the Chicago area since the fall of 1971. It didn't just start in the 2000s or 2010s, but there weren't it really increased in frequency starting in 2011.
Well, it was a big deal. I remember we were like, especially once we had started the podcast, we were way more aware of the existence of Mothman. We were like, oh shit, Mothman's back, and just in time too.
Yeah.
I'm sure we talked about it back when it happened.
Yeah. Okay. I have one more Chicago one, and this is my favorite sighting of Mothman in Chicago.
Okay.
Because
Kyle picking up a Chicago dog?
I wish. November 2019, which, if you will notice, that is after the wave. The wave ended in 2018. Years. So, on November 26th, 2019, Mothman was spotted at O'Hare Airport and International Airport in Chicago.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yes.
Okay.
So, a truck driver who stopped at O'Hare International Airport claimed he spotted a, quote, person with wings approximately 7 feet tall standing by a fence while he took a smoke break at about 6:30 p.m. He reported his sighting to UFO Clearinghouse, an online source for odd encounters that describes itself as, quote, a portal for the truth, which I always love when people report things to a place like that because it instantly tells on them for where the fact that they know the UFO Clearinghouse exists, you know?
Yeah.
So this led to an investigator coming in, talking to him and taking the report and everything. Said that the truck driver said the creature had a wingspan of approximately 6 feet and, quote, looked like a demon or a goblin and was solid black. The witness mentioned the creature had its back to him and that it was walking, quote, with a gait like a bird. He claimed that it was flapping its wings as it walked towards the large field that is by the airport runways and disappeared into the night. Now, the witness believed he was in the presence of a demon. He didn't say Mothman. He said demon. And the investigator asked if he had ever seen anything like it before. And the truck driver detailed a similar experience as a child in Mexico, where a, quote, solid black-winged creature was circling an open field, made a loud screeching noise right before flying off into the surrounding forest. So that brings me to wonder.
Yeah.
I guess that was 2009. Were there Mothman sightings in, I don't know, 2019? Say this guy was between 35 and 50. So you're looking at him being a child in Mexico approximately 30 years before this. So could I find a Mothman sighting in Mexico in the 1970s or 80s?
Did you?
Maybe.
Oh.
I didn't. I wasn't able to find it. But if anyone can, I would love to see it because I would love to corroborate this guy's fucking Mothman story from when he was a child. Because I want truck drivers stopping for a smoke break at the Chicago O'Hare Airport to see Mothman more than I want any of these other sightings to be true. Why? I don't really know, but I find it really funny. Yeah.
It's got a je ne sais quoi. I would also point out how funny it is that they submit their Mothman sighting to a UFO website but believe it was a demon.
Yes.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what we were talking about up front with Mothman being sort of this nebulous entity that can be whatever you want him to be, and he'll be whatever you want him to be. You know what I mean?
Mothman is a lens that is turned inward, you know?
Yeah, yes. He's a mirror.
Exactly.
Mothman holds a mirror up to society, I guess is what we're saying.
That is what we're saying. But there have been signs, there are sightings as recently. I found one from 2024 in Kane County, Illinois. Almost all of them are just someone out and about, either driving or walking, seeing a winged creature and being scared by it, and then it disappears.
Why Illinois? Does he branch out? Does he travel around the United States or what? Yeah,
I mean, okay, so these are some sightings between 2016 and 2024. He went back to West Virginia in 2016.
Excellent.
Flagstaff, Arizona in 2020.
Huh.
And then this is my favorite one. June 2022, unknown location. And here's the totality of the sighting. An unverified Mothman sighting was reported in June 2022 with no specific location provided. The witness described a red-eyed creature flying overhead, but sparse details and lack of corroboration made this account speculative, reflecting the challenge of verifying modern Mothman sightings.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that.
Really helpful.
Really, really helpful.
Yeah. But this one in 2024, in April, in Illinois, a truck driver was driving on a rural road at 60 miles per hour, and Mothman was keeping pace with him. So that's cool.
That's
and
a classic maneuver.
He fucking shot at Mothman with a handgun.
Did we talk about that one?
I don't think so, because when we talked about Mothman, it was pre-2024.
But I feel like we've talked about another... Maybe it was a different cryptid story where we talked about a guy where the cryptid kept pace with their car, and then they got out of the car and shot at it. I feel... Maybe that's just a recurring theme with cryptid encounters, but I feel like I heard it before.
In this case, I believe he fired... Now, I could be wrong on this because it's not explicitly stated in the account that I have. But I believe he fired the handgun from a moving vehicle.
Oh, he shot at it while he was driving. Okay.
I think so.
Interesting.
So,
wow.
So yeah, that is the most recent sighting I found was 2024. I'm sure you could find ones more recently than that if you wanted to, because like that's the thing is Mothman has just become such a ubiquitous cultural concept that people are prone to seeing him everywhere now. Like,
yeah,
the sightings become less and less detailed as time goes on. Like, there are certain ones, like the Fukushima sighting has some detail to it. The Freeburg Shrieker has a little bit of detail to it. Like, the older ones do, but so many of the modern ones are just, I was out and about and I saw this thing. It came over me and swooped past, and then went on to the night, and I was left with this feeling of dread and overwhelming terror. And
yeah,
it's so like the overall, from the actual accounts, Mothman is a terrifying presence, which is a thing that I feel like has been changed. You know, there are like monster fuckers. I respect you, and you like that part of it is that he's an intimidating, monstrous being. But a lot of people look at Mothman as this kind of cute and cuddly thing, when like the stories don't really affirm that take in a way that I find interesting.
No, I'm with that, and you know, I'll say it. I respect the monster fuckers. And like you said, yeah, him being a big, scary monster is part of the appeal. But I will also add, the 10-foot wingspan does help.
Mm-hmm. Can really wrap around you.
Yeah. Do you think that there's like size queens, but for like monstrous attributes? Yeah, like a wingspan or talons.
Oh, there have to be.
I won't settle for less than 10-inch talons, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've browsed the Kindle store and seen some of the wares vis-a-vis monster romances, and there do seem to be certain things that people are tied to and drawn to in that respect.
I used to chat with this person very occasionally, where we like met at a party, and I can't remember how it came up, but we started talking about I guess monster fucking.
Mm-hmm.
And
as you do,
she told me about that literature, and I remember, like, I can't remember specifics, but I remember she specifically would like read romance literature about like orcs. Orcs were the thing. Yeah. So I learned a lot about fantasy orc romance literature, and it sounds like there's a lot of world building with orc society and stuff in there, but also, you know, big sexy orcs and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. I'm just genuinely interested in learning about that stuff. So I
mean, I think there are some books that you can find that would elucidate it pretty intensely.
I'm sure. Although that's like a whole cottage industry that, like, whenever I glimpse it, it blows my mind how vast, how much is there.
Self-publishing really, and like digital publishing, I'll say, really was a boon for the romance industry.
So do you think, God, this would be so fucking sick, actually. Do you think that there's somebody who's doing this sort of like sexy monster book self-publishing thing, but with Mothman? And then okay, that's fair enough.
I know it is. I know it exists. I have seen multiple Mothman romances of varying levels of cute and terrifying.
I guess it's a naive question, but here's my follow-up to the idea. How fucking sick would it be if you were writing that stuff, like you were like writing Mothman smut, but you like knew all of the lore from like the 50s, like all the Gray Barker shit and the Silver Bridge, like you knew all that to like an alarming extent.
Is there a world where for a bonus show we read cryptid erotica and talk about how true to lore it is?
Is there a world? Nah, we're living in it. I would 100% use funds from the Patreon to purchase some cryptid smut and just see what that shit's all about. And if people out there are listening and
And if you have any recommendations,
That's what I was gonna say. If you know ones that are good,
I want to make this so crystal clear. I am not making fun of any of this. I think it is legitimately fascinating and cool, and is like a thing that I want to know more about, because it is it is a side of being into this sort of thing that I don't know a whole lot about, and it feels like it is kind of I'm not going to say crucial, but it feels important to the modern perception of this kind of thing, to fully grasp the modern state of cryptids. I feel like I have to read some smut.
Sure. I'm not making fun either, but I feel like I have to do my defense of, like, when I laugh about, like, for instance, like fetishes, where it's like I don't think that person's funny, but I do find the concept funny to me, like, a little bit. Like, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just sort of laughing conceptually. I don't know. I'm not making fun of anybody, but I think we have to admit that there is an element of funniness to all these things that we do as humans. So hopefully nobody takes it as me, like, making fun of anybody, but I guess I could see that.
I'm not going to take any shots at anybody for reading any of this stuff. Go out and have fun.
I'm genuinely interested. I would like to know. In fact, part of my conversation with that person I met at the party was me being like, well, what's the appeal? Like, why is this, aside from, like, the really obvious things, like, what's the appeal? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what she told me, because I think that might be a little private, but it is, I am, like, on the one hand I'm laughing, on the other hand I'm actually genuinely interested to just know. So
yeah,
you know.
All right, Kyle, do you want a big question?
Sure, why not? We've come this far.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you, what do you think drew Mothman in Chicago? I know that you've spent some time there and enjoy it. So what do you think Mothman has been up to while he's in the old Windy City?
It's the bean. It's the fucking problem of the... Mothman saw light glinting off that glorious bean and just fucking smacked into it over and over again.
So you think that Mothman, like, it has just been trying to get at the bean for 7 years?
Maybe. Well, I think eventually Mothman is at least smart enough to give up on the bean after a while of realizing, like, oh, you know, why do moths do that? I don't really know why moths, like, smack into lights over and over, but
I don't know why they're attracted to lights. I feel like
my knowledge of that is somewhere in the recesses of my mind, and I just can't tap into it right now. So, but I'm going to assume that Mothman is at least smart enough to eventually give up, and then he's like, oh, kind of like, you know, going to the local, getting brunch and stuff, and you know, getting. I mentioned the Chicago dog.
Went to that fucking diner that people really liked there, the golden something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If you've ever seen that video of, if you ever see, I think it's like a TikTok of the guy who's just like, this is life of a guy and daily life in Chicago, and it gets more and more like fucking
the Mark
insane.
Towers guy.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
And then I went and got Mark Tower,
the Mark Tower, yeah.
And then I met my friend at the Museum of Ice Cream. And it was epic. Yeah, that is legitimately a video I watch every time I come across it. It's
pretty funny.
It is a cultural touch point for me. So it fucking rules. I don't know the name of it at all.
Came for the bean, stayed for the Marg Towers is basically my theory of Mothman in Chicago. What about yourself?
I think that Mothman
is this going to be an electrical audio thing?
No, I actually wasn't going to. Now, there is a connection
if Jules was here, we would say Mothman was touring electrical audio.
Yeah, he was coming to lay down some tracks at electrical audio. But I'm going to say much like... Now, this does come from the fact there is a book that is that came out after Anthony Bourdain's death, I believe. Mm-hmm. That is people that he knew writing letters about what they would take him to do if he came to their town again. Like, it's this kind of like... And there's a letter that he reads on the audiobook format that Steve Albini spends like 10 minutes just talking about the various places he would take Anthony Bourdain to go get a Polish sausage in Chicago. And so I really think that in general he would Mothman Maybe he came for the bean, but he stayed for the sausage. He came for he came for the bean, stayed for the Polish.
Sure.
You know?
Porque no los dos. The bean is the allure, Marg Towers, Polish sausage, all on one Saturday in Chicago, really. You could just get it all done.
Yeah. He likes to go around the city and try out every place that makes good hot dogs and Polishes and try them all. He's working on a lifestyle blog chronicling the many sausages of the second city.
Mothman's a little bit of a foodie. I think we can say it. Mothman's kind of a foodie. And I'm always saying to Mothman, yeah, dude, I like food too. You don't have to make it like a whole weird thing. Like,
yeah, you don't need to make your own personality.
Yeah, for real. But he's a bit of a foodie. We all know that about him. And that's why that's why he's in Chicago, where it's one of the best places for food and, in my experience, one of the most expensive. So who's funding Mothman's foodie adventures? That's the next question we're going to have to answer.
That is the next question. How is Mothman sustaining himself financially in Chicago?
Yup.
That's why he left in 2018. The rent got too damn high.
Yep. Sad day.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's why he was at Chicago O'Hare Airport in 2019 because he was getting the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll wrap us up for this week. I hope you enjoyed the Mothman World Tour.
I love Mothman.
And maybe we'll find more excuses to talk about the man, the myth, the legend more in the future.
Mothman will be back. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Mothman will return. So on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all for listening. If you want to find this podcast, we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts anywhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're going to be there.
We're on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. We're on Twitch, twitch.tv/itgetsweird. If you want to email us, especially if you're outside of the country and you want to answer the questions that I was bringing up today, email us itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Check it out. Just let us know how we should address you. We might read your email out on the show if you want us to. But let us know if you don't, though. Sometimes I worry that I've read out an email that was not meant to be read on the show.
I always wonder if we should do the Marvel thing where it's like mark your email safe to print. You know?
Sure.
Like, basically,
yeah.
Make it clear in your email if you don't want it read, because we tend to read things that say nice things about us and bring up questions about us. So please hit us up, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support us, and I know you do, patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have like the cheapest fucking Patreon around. Honestly, it should be more expensive than it is. We have a $1 tier. That's the tip tier. Just saying, hey, here's $1. Thanks for doing what you do. But at the $2 tier and the $5 tier, you get so much bonus content, an unbelievable amount of bonus content. At the $2 tier, you get It Gets Weird TV, where Niall and I watch weird television. We just wrapped season 3 of The X-Files. As of this episode going up, we are debuting a new series at the $2 tier called Comic Break, where Niall and I read some comics in between some TV seasons, just to break up the TV stuff, because there's some comics we want to talk about. And Niall and I had a really good discussion. I'm gonna let that be behind the Patreon wall for now, not talk about it too much, but check it out if you like comics or us, because it's a good discussion. At the $5 tier, you get access to World of Weird, which comes out in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV and our other $2 bonus shows. It's the show where we talk about whatever the hell we want. It's where I talked about some more of this stuff with the disappearing researchers and scientists and stuff. We talk music, we talk movies, we talk a lot of movies too. We're both really into movies. It's a fun show, very relaxed, informal stuff on there. So if that's the kind of stuff you like, the $5 tier is the best bang for your buck. Huge back catalog at the Patreon. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out with our listeners. People are chatting about Bigfoot, about all the crazy shit going on in the world that's often discussed too. UFOs, conspiracies, all of it's there. And it's just a couple bucks. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. If you can't donate, if money's tight, we get it. We completely understand. We still love you, still appreciate you. But the least you could do to give back, tell some friends. Tell some folks about us. Let people know that It Gets Weird
podcast exists and that we're the best ones to fucking do it, frankly.
It's true.
Let some folks know, let some friends, let some family know. Tell people who you think would fucking hate it. I think I said this recently and decided that might be a fun experiment. Just tell people, you look at this person and say, like, this person would probably fucking hate this show. Tell them to listen to it. I would love for that to happen, frankly.
Yeah.
So please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for supporting the show throughout all these years. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.